Good morning. I am going to walk through a little bit of this lesson with you, but I'm going to ask you to do most of it on your own because you guys are able to do that at this point. I'm just going to walk you through it a little bit. Okay, today we're going to go through our overview. I've already read this to you, but we'll go through it again. In the 5th century BCE, a Greek city-state called Sparta emerged as a tiny powerhouse in the eastern Mediterranean. Its greatest rival was nearby Athens, whose population was much larger, and whose values were very different. Sparta's ability to compete with Athens and the rest of the outside world, depending in large part on its education system and the values that were taught. This mini-EQ asks you to weigh the strengths and the weaknesses of Spartan education. So that will be our focus. We're going to begin by defining the following terms. Peloponnese, city-state, which we have defined in the past, Phalanx, a Helot, and Spartite. So we're going to start with the Peloponnese. This is the name of the peninsula in southwestern Greece. As we're going, you'll want to be looking at your packet. There's a section for you to answer the definitions to these vocab words. You can fill them in as we go. It's right after the background question. If you're using the online format, I will make a video for you to go through that. There's also a place to put the definitions there. You can see on our timeline, we're working in a frame of time between 900 BC for the founding of Sparta and really 300. 404 BC is when Athens surrendered to Sparta, but then while Sparta did win the battle with Athens, most of their civilization was wiped out at that time, their city-state, and just 100 years later, the Visigoths came in and destroyed the Spartan city. Oops, sorry about that. So we're talking about this area here on the peninsula. You can see Athens, Sparta, Olympia, and some of the other Greek city-states. And you can see that Sparta is quite isolated, and it was actually landlocked. They did not have a lot of access to the coast. A city-state, we've been talking about this a lot this year. A small kingdom made up of a city and surrounding countryside. If I'm going too fast, feel free to pause at any time and make notes as you need. Phalanx. All right. Probably a new word for you, but a phalanx was a very important military strategy used by the Spartans and introduced by the Spartans. And I found as many photos as I could, sketches depicting a phalanx. So it's a very tight infantry fighting formation with overlapping spears and shields. In this picture, you can see they're very tightly lined up. Each shield protects themselves and the man next to them. And with the spears, you can see they've got layer upon layer of protection. They were not throwing these spears. They were hand-to-hand combat, battling face to face. This is a formation of 256 men that was practiced. This was a regular practice by the Spartans, and it proved to be extremely effective and nearly unbeatable because with the shields, they were protecting themselves and the people near them, and they could move to protect themselves as needed. And it was really hard for somebody fighting against them to overcome this battle formation. Helots. So Helots, you're probably going to begin thinking of Helots as slaves. They weren't really slaves. They were the servant class of Sparta, and they were treated kind of as slaves, but they were allowed to own their own land. But the Spartans had complete control over them and their land. So whatever they grew on their land, the Spartans were able to come in and take anything they wanted, and the Helots had to give 50% of whatever they created to the Spartans, and the Spartans could treat them, kill them if they wanted to. They could really treat them terribly. And then we've got a Spartite, a pure Spartan, as opposed to a Helot. So this is somebody born of Spartan citizenship, a man who's considered a pure Spartan. They were the ones who had all the rights, as you can imagine. All right, now we've got our background essay. I'm going to have you look at that for a moment. And in a moment, I'm going to make a second video of myself reading it. You have two options. You can go on to, actually, I'm going to have you all look at the online version and have it read there, because then it'll be a little more consistent. And then I'll show you guys how to use the online version as well in a second video. But you're going to hear it read first. After you've read the entire thing one time, then you're going to go back and closely read it. Remember, closely reading it means read one paragraph at a time and make a note on each paragraph individually. So you're going to read the entire thing